Hello, and welcome to this brief podcast recording. My name is Sharon, and I'm with Flat World Knowledge. I'm here today with Bruce Averill and Patricia Eldridge, authors on their brand new general chemistry textbook with Flat World Knowledge. Hi, Bruce, and hi, Patricia.
Hi, Sharon. How are you doing?
We're doing great. And let's not keep our listeners waiting today. Let's jump right in and talk a little bit about your new textbook, General Chemistry. I'm going to start with you, Patricia, if you wouldn't mind. Can you share with our listeners today why it is you decided, along with Bruce, to write a general chemistry textbook?
I'd be happy to. After many years of teaching various courses in chemistry, both of us found that there was a lot of dissatisfaction with the general chemistry texts that were on the market. And our book, we felt, addresses those issues that we encountered. What we decided to do was revisit the entire general chemistry philosophy curriculum and go back to texts that went into the 1950s and take a look at what we thought was being done right and what we thought may have been lost over the period of years. And so we actually threw out all of the ideas and said, okay, what do we think works and what doesn't work? And where do we think the students are missing the message? Because despite all of the glitz and the added features and everything else, students seemed to actually be learning less chemistry than they had been with previous texts. And so this was the basis for, the approach that we used in developing this particular text.
That's great. And let me turn kind of to you, Bruce. And Patricia kind of alluded a little bit to this, but if you could tell us specifically what does your general chemistry textbook kind of give to both the instructor and the student that general chemistry textbooks that are out there today kind of aren't giving or aren't helping with?
Well, I think one of the key points goes back to one of at least my major motivations, which was to try to write a textbook that would turn students onto chemistry as opposed to turning them into English majors in the first semester. And so in the decision-making process that Patricia alluded to, we made a number of decisions, and one of the things that we noticed, for example, is that most textbook authors seem to have forgotten how many chances you get to make a good first impression. And they start their text off with a absolutely boring review of high school math topics and accuracy and precision and so forth. And so we made a decision to introduce that material on a need-to-know basis so we could get right into the chemistry and start showing students how chemistry really is important in their lives, and introducing them very early and rapidly to socially relevant and interesting kinds of topics. So, for example, by the end of the first unit, they will have learned something about the chemistry of ozone layer depletion, climate change, acid rain, and thermochemistry and nutrition, dietary kinds of information. We introduce organic compounds in Chapter 2 and use them throughout for two reasons. One, there are many more interesting organic compounds that students have heard about than inorganic ones. And secondly, we really want to emphasize the difference between covalent and ionic compounds, which is something that I think gets a little bit of short shrift in many of the current texts. Another thing we wanted to do was to bring in advanced information, interesting current information, and we decided to do it without using the traditional boxes, which are essentially set off by some sort of motif, which basically tells students that don't need to read it, it won't be on the test. And so we've incorporated this kind of material into the text. We brought in a wide range of applications, because between us, Patricia and I have probably taught every kind of course that is taught in a chemistry department. And so we have a very wide range of applications, from geochemistry and astronomy to archaeology and engineering and materials. And these come into both in the text and in the end of chapter problems. And Patricia wrote all of those from scratch. And this was a truly amazing achievement because they're all original, and people who have read them have just consistently praised them. And we then decided to use clearly defined pedagogical techniques. Stepwise problem solutions very clearly worked out. We emphasize intuitive and recognition of patterns by our Note the Patterns device, and we try to avoid subdivisions by emphasizing the unifying themes, that an acid-base reaction is pretty much the same as a base-acid reaction, for example. So these are the kinds of things that we've wanted to try to incorporate in the text.
Perfect, perfect. Well, hey, I'm going to wrap up our time here with our listeners by just asking one last question. If you could tell everybody why you decided to publish this book with Flat World, I'm sure they would be interested in knowing that.
Well, I thought it was kind of funny because Flat World was actually a format that we had originally envisioned for this text. Because there are so many disciplines that are now requiring chemistry, different courses, or different schools, different audiences need different tools. And so what we had envisioned this, what we had envisioned this as originally was a flexible text. So that if you had an audience that was largely health sciences, you could elect to remove the engineering applications or more of them. For example, we have an entire chapter that is devoted to solids and materials, and maybe the health sciences aren't as interested in that. Maybe the engineering applications that are built into the, each chapter are not of interest, to, different disciplines. Vice versa, maybe the engineering schools are more interested in the engineering applications rather than the health sciences applications. And so what we had done originally was plan it to be a flexible text. Maybe a school doesn't need, a review of the math concepts. Some schools do. And so Flat World Knowledge was the first platform to come out with a very, leading edge kind of, vision of what you could do with a text, which was actually very, very much in keeping with our vision of the text when it was first developed. So it was a beautiful, relationship.
Yeah, now our custom MIO tool will allow people to make those adjustments to your textbook, and that does allow for a certain kind of flexibility that you guys wrote for. So it is a good match. And with that, I'd like to thank you both, Bruce and Patricia. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, obviously, for your dedication to your discipline. And I'd like to thank all of our listeners today. We hope that you will come out to flatworldknowledge.com, check out our catalog, and you will find general chemistry in the sciences section of our catalog. And you can read the entire book online there, or of course request a desk copy to review in the comfort of your office or home. Thank you for your time, and we will look forward to working with you. Bye now.
Goodbye.